Torn between the voices of his straight-edge bus driver father and a gangster father figure, a young man attempts to navigate the complexities of adolescence in a racially charged world. I'm psychologist Dr. Brian Violet, and on this week's Sinner in a Movie, I sit down with former tennis pro Andrew Salick as we discuss one of my favorites, A Bronx Tale. This is the Catholic Sinner Show. All right.
Bronx Tale.
A Bronx Tale. I'm elated that you chose this film. And
Have you how many you saw it before, obviously?
I've seen it before. I absolutely love this film. I don't talk about it very much. You know, when someone asks you what are your favorite, 5 films, it doesn't make that in my mind, in my consciousness, but I've always been very impacted by this film. It's had a special place in my heart. And when we get there in the conversation, I will talk to you about how I actually use this in psychotherapy.
No way.
A scene from this film.
No
so
way.
It's really in my consciousness.
Okay, cool.
So when you said A Bronx Tale, I was like, that's great.
Oh my God, I know. Your response on text was great. And I'm like, I guess he likes this choice.
I love it. I love it. I'm open to new movies, but I also it's one of those films I haven't seen too much where I could quote it.
Yes.
But I've seen it and it was familiar, but it was great.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think, first of all, it's just a cool place to be. It's a cool place to exist in.
Yes.
You want to hang out in this movie.
You want to hang out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bronx.
The Bronx. I think the music.
Oh, music's fantastic.
Yeah. The outdoor setting, everyone's out on the stoop. We don't have that anymore.
No, I know.
You have the hilarious Italian culture with the nicknames.
Yes. Love those nicknames.
Tommy Toupee.
Yep.
Jojo the Whale. I mean, just so funny. You can't help but laugh during those early scenes.
Yeah.
As he's setting the setting. He
is.
literally is explicitly
Yeah.
setting this is what that time was like.
Yep.
And then even later on in the transition, he's like, the Beatles were showing us a new way to live. The setting is really, really important here.
Totally.
And even the last line of the whole film, this is just another Bronx Tale.
Just another Bronx Tale.
But setting is great.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then when we start to, delve into it, we have two major themes going on. So there's the one of the question of who's his father. That's the big question. And then the other one is the question of racism.
Yes.
And which in a certain way comes out of nowhere.
Right.
And it's does it even fit in this film with what it's about? I mean, it does because it's such a great film, but it almost feels like it's additive, to the main thrust of the film.
Right.
Anyway, so what are your basic impressions? Why did you choose this film?
I know it's so funny that there are those issues are there, and I feel like that the film is amazing.
So good.
I don't even, to be honest with you, it's when I was thinking, it's one of my favorite movies. So number one, it's when you asked me to pick have me watch a movie so we could talk about it. I love this movie.
Yeah.
I think it's got everything you want in a great film, right? So it's got the humor, we talk about, obviously the nicknames and the characters and some of the humor is there. It's got the love story between C and Jane, which I think is probably a part of the movie that maybe doesn't get talked about enough
attention.
Some of those scenes and stuff.
Beautiful.
When they're first getting to know each other, when he's walking her back to her apartment.
His vulnerability.
Oh.
He sets the stage with describing her. She was what do you say? She was tall. She was classy.
Yes.
She was so classy.
Yeah.
And there's one more adjective. I forget what it was. She's tall. She was beautiful, and she was classy. Something like that. And yeah.
Yeah.
You experience that with her the whole time. She's a beautiful young woman.
She is. Some of the love scenes are great. And then that first kiss they had, and then she was like, that's not a kiss. This is a kiss. How great is that? Imagine if you're a teenage boy and a girl is saying that's not a kiss, here's a kiss. And you're amazing moment.
Well, you know what's so, and I have so many thoughts. So one of the tensions you find with elder Calogero is he is both gangster and that sweet little boy.
Yep.
And with her, you see the sweet little boy.
Yep.
You don't see gangster.
Never.
It's
right.
actually his true self.
It's his true self. He is his true self with Jane. And interestingly enough, that gangster component, you end up finding with Sonny, that yes, Sonny's a gangster, but he also is vulnerable. And Sonny
just with C.
Just with C.
Yeah.
Right? And so he has that aspect
Yes. And in fact, he tries to curb C back into that part of himself.
Yes.
Very conflicting messages from Sonny.
Totally.
Because, and this was, I think, Lorenzo, his point was that it's not what you say to my kid. It's what he sees around here.
It's what he sees around here.
And what Sonny would say was actually pretty healthy.
Yeah.
It was pretty healthy for the most part.
Was,
Don't get involved with these kids. Go to college. Get 2 educations.
Yep.
But, be true to yourself and don't screw up your life. This is for me. This life is for me. Don't have this be a life for you.
Yeah. Don't waste your talent.
Yeah. It's a major theme. Wasted talent.
But then what C is seeing is different than what Sonny's telling him.
Right.
Yeah. Part of the reason I picked the film too, and I think you loved this part of it, was that I went to school in the Bronx. I went to Fordham. They have the Bronx and the Manhattan campus, but I was in the Bronx, and
he even says this is Fordham.
Fordham, yeah. So the Fordham neighbor, like that 187th, like I lived 2 blocks from there. Like those scenes, like that funeral home where they had Sonny's.
You recognize it?
Yeah, all this stuff. Like, so it's just
so cool.
That part of my life is. I mean, I can't even speak enough about my college day. I loved going to Fordham. I loved being in the Bronx. I loved Little Italy. Yeah. Now it just was Was
it the same?
It was. Parts of it were very similar.
Yeah.
Parts of it had obviously evolved and gentrified, and the communities have diversified. So there's a difference there. But I would tell you,
was the stoop culture still real?
Yes, it was. And being in college and seeing the stoop culture. And seeing, this Italian-American community and the way that they was so similar to that movie, to like what I experienced personally as a college student. I lived on Arthur Avenue. Like my senior year, my college roommates and I lived on Arthur Avenue, and I bartended at a bar literally on Arthur Avenue, where the owner of the bar was in the Mafia. So he was a mobster. And he actually, in fact, in my fall of senior year, and I'd been bartending at this place for no more than a month or 2, he got indicted. He was part of a large group of mobsters that basically got sent to prison.
You were in this movie.
I went to go visit him in federal prison in Pennsylvania. My boss, who is the owner of the bar that I bartended at.
Come on.
He got put in jail for extortion and he got locked up. And I never forget, like before he went to jail, me and one of my other college roommates that were bartenders there, he told us to like take care of the bar, make sure Carol, his wife, like make sure she's okay.
Yeah.
And like his wife then kind of was the quasi like owner, boss of the bar, but really he was still calling the shots from jail.
Wow.
So I like lived in this weird like mafioso culture where I had, Violet, you're going to die about this. This is crazy that like you brought up the names, how it's funny in the movie.
Yeah.
We had at my bar, my college bar that I bartended at, before the college kids would come in later at night, post like dinner time and like whatever classes were over, night classes were done at 9:00. College kids would come in and stay, New York bars open until 4. So it was like the late night crowd. But the after work crowd, and I would start bartending a lot of times at 4 or 5 p.m., like depending on if I didn't have classes and stuff, I would take those shifts. We had all the neighborhood Italians were like, because George, my boss, and God rest his soul, he is no longer with us here. He passed away of brain cancer years ago, and Lauren and I actually went to the funeral.
Wow.
Which was, I mean, it's kind of like what you'd envision in the movies, like all the Italians and everyone's in the church with the sunglasses, and it was at one of these it was at one of the churches at St. Carmel on 187th where the movie is filmed, and it was like the same type of scene. And even though this is like many years afterwards, but anyways, we had Tommy Parks, who worked for Parks and Recs division. All right, so his name, like all the names, the nicknames, it was like the
Tommy
people
Parks, yeah.
They all had behind the bar. I had a sheet of
nicknames, yeah.
I had a sheet of paper that literally was like, it'd be a Tommy Parks, Joey Prosciutto. So this guy Joey, who like was obsessed with prosciutto. So his name
but
was
the
Joey
Italians
Prosciutto.
always shorten it, right?
Yeah, Joey Prosciutto.
Hey, have some regatta. You want some regatta? Yeah. Some prosciutto.
Danny Suits, who like this guy wore a suit every day of his life. Ugh. So like the Italian names.
It's so great. So funny.
And I had it behind the bar, and it'd be like Tommy Parks, Joey Prosciutto, and they would just have like a running tab. But they had all these stupid nicknames. They were so good.
That's great.
And so I lived that, and I'm like, so when I'm watching The Bronx Tale, and I'm hearing like these guys who was the guy in the what was his name? Coffee Cake. One of the guys he like had, you know.
Drake's, wasn't it? Like Drake's Coffee Cakes?
Yeah, but that one in the movie, like his face, because he had like, you know.
Right, but he said he looked like a coffee, like a Drake's coffee.
Like a Drake's
cake.
Coffee Cake.
I think I think it was something Drake, wasn't
But
it?
I was, you know, of course it's, you know, we say it in jest, but like that type of stuff, I was
My favorite
in a world where I saw that happening.
My favorite was Jojo the Whale. He said, "They say you don't walk next to him, you walk among him."
You walk among.
Such a great line.
Such a good line.
Yeah.
So I love that. So I guess that you asked the question to me about like picking the movie. Number one, it's an awesome film, and we'll get into some of those issues that you mentioned a moment ago. But like also because that particular neighborhood, like I lived in that neighborhood. Now this is like I lived in the neighborhood like, you know, 40 years after or 30 years after the movie was filmed. But like I see some of the shots and the stoop life and stuff, and it brings me back to like my college days.
Yeah, of course. That's good. You're gonna have an emotional connection.
Love that.
Yeah. So let's start with the young Calogero, and I thought what was very interesting was the early perceptions he had of Sonny.
Yeah.
And he said everybody loved him.
Yeah.
Now his dad pushed back against that.
To love him or fear him, right?
Love him or fear him, or respect him.
Right.
There's this idea of questioning whether or not he's loved or respected. Sonny chimes in on that later.
Yeah.
He's like, he actually like, is a good question. He's like, it's ideally you would be both, but if I have to choose, it'd be fear because fear lasts longer.
Yeah.
And I think Sonny Sonny had a heart. When he talked about Machiavelli and the concept of availability and being there.
Yeah.
He's like, the people love me. They're happy that I'm here because they feel protected and safe. And then the people that fear me know that I'm here, so they're not going to screw around.
Yeah.
So, but he was talking about there is a subsection of people from his perspective that he believes loved him.
Right.
And I think that includes, Calogero, but also I think it includes Carmine. When he shot that guy,
Yeah.
I think he wasn't even part of that argument.
Yeah.
He just pulled his gun out and protected him and shot him.
Yeah.
So, you could argue in the mafia culture, like, is that authentic? Because it's basically you're paying for protection.
Yeah.
But I think in his mind, it was a warped version of loving them.
Yes.
He wanted to be a father.
Right.
And there was a purity
I
to
agree.
his relationship with Calogero where it wasn't, he didn't have to, Calogero didn't pay him anything.
No.
But he it's natural to want to be a father,
Right.
to have family. This is always the complex, interesting question about mafia culture, which is immorality, betrayal, crime. I love you.
I know.
I love you. You're part of my family.
Yeah.
I'll die for you. Some things you don't mess with. I loved Lorenzo. What a great scene.
That scene where
I
he's
never
like-
step out of line. You know this. Ask anyone in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you don't mess with a man's family. You're wrong.
Yeah.
And then he respected that.
Yeah, he respected that.
He's like, should I go whack him?
No.
No, leave him
He said,
alone.
let him alone. He said, leave him alone.
It's not clear
I know.
what in the Italian mafia culture, like where betrayal begins and family ends and all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Right. It was very interesting. I think the Lorenzo Sonny dynamic of the movie is amazing. I think Sonny very much respects Lorenzo in a weird way. Almost you envies him that he's a hardworking man. Yeah, he drives a bus. He's not making all the money.
Oh, it's a defense mechanism. Sonny's criticism
Is
a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Because he knows the truth.
yes.
And I might as well jump into it now. This is the thing that I've talked to people about in therapy. The truth that Lorenzo puts out there
Yeah.
is it doesn't take strength to pull a trigger.
Right.
It's easy to be a bad person. It's hard to be a good person.
It is.
You know who the tough guy is? Your father.
Yeah.
The man who drives the bus.
Get up every morning and work.
Yes. And I think on some deep down level, Sonny knew that. And he was
yes.
jealous, and he did admire Lorenzo for that.
He did. And he's like, you know what? This guy wakes up every day. He works hard. He's got this kid who I wish I had this kid.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to make him my kid.
I'm gonna
Here
make
comes
him
my boy.
Here comes my boy.
Yeah.
You know, and I do think that the movie, it had some of these scenes with Lorenzo and Sonny that there's this like weird, not like a shift of power back and forth, but it's like Sonny would kind of like impose his mobster power at moments.
But I think only for public reasons. He couldn't let
Yes.
Lorenzo trump him.
Yes.
Because other people were watching, and he
Yep.
had to maintain that respect.
Yep.
But privately he's like, let him go. He's
Yeah.
all right. He's all right.
Yeah. And I did like that a lot. And I do think it is just so funny how, man, it's an amazing cap to the movie how then Lorenzo shows up at the wake
Yes.
with his son.
Yes.
And he's paying his respects.
Yes.
Even though this guy was the source of all of Lorenzo's like
I know.
frustrations for
Well, he was really honest and authentic. And if you notice, by the way, right then was the first time he called his son C.
I didn't notice that.
He goes, come on, C, let's go. He never called him C the
never.
whole film, but he honored that kind of dynamic between the two of them. But throughout the film, I was, as a dad with a son, myself, I was angry at Sonny
Yep.
for stealing the innocence
Yes.
of C.
Yeah.
And that's what Lorenzo admits later on. He's like, I never hated you. I'm just upset that you made my son grow up so quickly. You see that, like
That was a good line.
yeah, that tension that becomes true later on in C, like it begins like he's still like a little boy. He loves the Yankees.
I know.
He hugs his dad. They have a good loving connection. It's a good father-son relationship, and then it's spoiled.
Yeah.
What do you like Mickey Mantle for? He's not going to pay your rent. You know?
I know.
And it like spoils
Yeah.
the innocence. And as a father, I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm like, I do not want the world to destroy my child's innocence. Do you feel that way as a dad?
Totally. Yeah. No, I think it's so true. And then it just like expanded on that, like just because I feel like all of a sudden he's ingrained and now he's seeing all these things and he did, you grow up so quickly. But no, I feel that way as a dad for sure. I feel that way, I see it with some of our friends that have older kids too. And it's like in a weird way, sometimes when we get together, not that innocence is stolen. And it's like, we have a great group of friends and their kids are great, but it's like, I even noticed that with my kids, like looking up to like, and of course that's like how
they're exposed to things before you're ready for your child to be exposed to them. Yeah.
And it's like, but they look up to that. It's like, oh, this person's older. They're cooler. You know, they have this.
Which is C versus to Sonny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking too about how in the 60s, I don't think there was as much television. So in the neighborhood, you think about those kids, like who are their role models? They weren't watching TV.
No.
So it was these mobster type of characters that they tried to emulate.
Right. The stoop life, man. The stoop life is a real thing, and I think it's so cool.
There's this weird kind of bridge too with C, where after he doesn't identify him, Sonny in the lineup.
Yep.
And before it fast forwards to the future, people start showing him respect in the neighborhood. They give him free fruit and stuff. And
Yes.
he's like really attracted to that.
Yes.
It's a very, very interesting question about, from a masculine male perspective, this question of respect.
Yeah.
And I know of a study that asked like 4,000 men, would you rather be respected or loved? What do you think they predominantly said?
Probably respected, I guess.
Respected. That's because in the male psychology, there's no difference.
Yeah, right.
In a female psychology, there can be.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you think of women that are like, in abusive relationships, but think, oh, he still loves me, but he beats me up every night or something.
Right.
Right. But for a man, we can't really fathom that.
Right.
If you don't respect me,
Yeah.
you don't love me.
Right.
That's why young C saw what seemed like respect, but Lorenzo argued was just fear, seemed like respect towards Sonny
Yep.
in the neighborhood. And he's like, everybody loves you. Everybody loves him, Dad, just like everyone loves you on the bus. I don't understand. And he's like, you will when you get older.
Me when you get older.
But there are these subtle differences of like respect and love and fear.
It's true. It's really interesting.
I know that. Like, when my dog listens to me, I'm like, I love you so much. It's like that obedience, that like respect I feel.
Yes. I wonder about like, you mentioned it earlier. And I do think that, there's less of this now. And obviously that mob culture has kind of like gone away. But there is that weird dynamic that I feel like could get fleshed out like in a conversation like this, or we can like talk more about it. But it's like, and I saw it like living in the Bronx on Arthur Avenue. It's like these mobsters who are part of the Mafia, and they're doing things that are illegal, and there's crime.
Yeah.
And there's things that are happening that most people would not agree with. But then because many of them are like religious, right? And because they have this sense of like, okay, they're protecting, it's like they almost get away with it with being a criminal, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's a heightened level of what exists in human relationships anyway. Like in a healthy community of people, generally everyone is centered around the same sort of shared goal of communion and relationship and connection. We are a community.
Right.
That's what happens in the mafia culture.
Right.
And occasionally, though, people will hurt you and betray you.
Yep.
The only difference, though, is when you're in the mafia level, the consequences are different.
Right.
Because the content of what's going on in that community is dangerous. But on a human level, the same thing happens in communities. It's just like betrayal here with guns and death and crime is different than like, oh, you told someone something I told you not to tell them. You know what I mean?
Slap on the wrist.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing though on a human level. It's just that because of the crime and the danger, it's like it just happens. There's just different consequences.
There's like a love though. Like I feel like this in America, there's like an obsession with the mob, like the mob boss, and
because
like
it's confusing. I think it's so interesting that there's love and danger mingled.
Yeah,
I think there's something about love and danger being mingled together. I mean, from a deep psychological level, when I start to get weird into psychology and stuff, anxiety exists because of disconnection. All anxiety and depression. I mean, I'm going to get real weird here for a second. All anxiety and depression is ultimately fear of death. At the bottom level. Because death is the one thing that I have to do alone. You can't go with me when I die. I can't go with you when you die. It reflects the ultimate separation.
Right.
Now, from a Catholic Christian perspective, you could say, well, even that you don't have to do alone. Christ goes through the doors of death with you. But if you don't have faith, it's still like it's the most frightening thing there is. And so the antidote then to anxiety is communion and connection.
Right.
And so those things are like kind of flip sides of the same coin.
Right.
So when you feel anxiety and depression, you talked earlier about how you were in a difficult place. What'd you do? You called your mom.
Right.
You called your mom. It's people and connection that helps with those problems with mood.
Right.
And so, I mean, to get even weirder, you think about people's like sexual behaviors and sexual choices and, like sex with asphyxiation. That's like a fetish, right? It's like I'm like dying, but I'm so aroused because of the emotional connection that happens in that context. It's like the scarier it is, the more intense the love and communion and connection and consolation. So I think like the mafia life, it's like that intersection of like fear, danger, scary, and I love you and you're my family. And we're connected. It's like the antidote to the fear, but they play back and forth.
Play back and forth.
So it's so interesting to us.
It's so interesting. It's so confusing.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really confusing.
And you go back and like I even think about like I don't know when we were just chatting about this stuff like the show Sopranos and like Tony Soprano and how he was like such a loved character. But he was a guy who was just like would kill people.
He's a sociopath.
Yeah.
But we rooted for him.
Well, we rooted for him
because he was a family man.
We rooted for him
because he was a family man, and we could all identify with love and family.
Yeah.
All right, let's. There's so much we can talk about in this film. Let's kind of like jump forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So Elder C. is
yeah.
now I think 17, 18 years old, and you have his friendships and the Deuces Wild and those guys who are just. I mean, I don't even have much to say about them. They're just trying to be mobsters and whatever. And you do have the question of we should probably address the racism in the film. The N-word was hard to watch.
Yes.
It was hard to watch. It like came out of nowhere and I felt like I got hit in the face.
I know. And because we are now on a point in time which is amazing that is so seldomly used, or at least
where we are.
At least where we are.
In the country.
And I think that probably even when I first watched this movie, I think I probably first watched this movie over 20 years ago when I first saw it. It wasn't as big of a shock factor.
Yes.
To hear that word versus like now it is. I agree with you.
Yes.
And it's alarming. So, the race component
was tough.
It was tough. It's a circumstance that's the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a piece of art. It's reflecting the way things were.
That's how things were.
It's still hard to hear.
Yeah.
I thought Jane was so progressive. She was like, I like Italians. Like it wasn't even a big deal.
Yeah.
There was like an innocence to it. And, and then you think about the two father figures, and actually Sonny was a bit more progressive than Lorenzo.
He was.
Yeah. Lorenzo was like, well, we want to marry our own. I'm not racist, but
Yep.
we marry our own, which by today's standards, we would say you're racist.
Racist.
And, but Sonny was like, it doesn't matter. The only thing that he calls his friends jerk-offs. Your friends are a bunch of jerk-offs.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is what the two of you make you happy.
Yeah.
That's a very progressive view by
progressive.
Sonny. This is so funny about Lorenzo and Sonny is like they're kind of like neck and neck, but in some ways one of them is healthier than the other, but not in all areas.
Not in all areas.
No,
it toggles.
Lorenzo is like controlling.
Yep.
That's not good. He's so controlling. Sonny is he exposes him to gangster life, but he wants to help him.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So the racism question is messy, and then you see this discrepancy between Sonny's perspective on race and Lorenzo's, and I think Sonny's healthier and more progressive and good. And then the actually how it plays out is pretty raw.
Yeah.
His friends die in the car. This is something I want to talk to you about. That car ride. When he's in the car with his friends.
Yeah.
He got swept up in it. It's the Molotov cocktails are like by their feet.
Yep.
I've been in that car.
Yes.
Have you been in that car?
Yes.
I've been in that car like, uh-oh.
Yep.
I'm with the wrong people.
Yep.
In the wrong place.
Yep.
I'm just a good kid. I like the little boy in me comes
Yep.
out like,
Yes.
get me out of here. But I'm frozen and I can't. I can't
me
do
too,
anything.
And you can't. And they actually the camera panned to him. It was perfect. And they showed him, and he was kind of just sitting there in the middle, and you could tell he was just like, "What do I do now?" Deer in headlights. Like,
Nothing I can do. Let me out. Like
Then
he could.
He could have said, "I'm out of here, guys."
Yeah.
Chastised by his friends, made fun of, no longer part of the crew.
In his whole world.
In his world.
He lived in that neighborhood. I mean, a tremendous amount of courage, but I could feel the fear in me. Like I was
Me
brought
too.
back to
I
those
felt that
moments.
way too. Yes, I've had that moment where I'm like, I should not be in this car. I'm part of the wrong situation right now.
Yes. You know what's funny? You talk about your experience in college with being in Fordham. For a year, I went to Sacred Heart University,
Yeah, I remember.
which was right up the Hutch.
Yeah.
It was right up the Merritt Parkway. And one of my closest friends was from the Bronx. And I found myself caught in situations like that where just kind of the little boy in me is like, how did I get here? I don't want to be a part of this. I love these friends, but this is beyond me. And I'm terrified right now.
Yep.
And like, please someone rescue me or help me.
Yeah.
Talk about moments of prayer. Those were moments of prayer for me. Like, please protect me from something terrible happening. In this case, in the film, something terrible did happen.
Yeah.
But I felt like I was protected in many times in my life where something terrible could have happened.
Right.
But I somehow, the circumstances got me out of it.
Yep.
You remember moments like that?
100%. Oh my God. Yeah. On multiple occasions. Yeah. I mean, it's just, thank God. And we're both here talking now. So this is good news for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, the racism part, like, man, yeah, it was a matter of the times that they were, that the movie was filmed in the 60s. And that was those neighborhoods, the segregation was a big thing back then. And that was a thing. But it was hard to watch. It was even hard to watch some of, when one of sees that knucklehead friend, I forget his name, when he pulled the kid off the bike and they got into that big melee.
So
Like, that was an awful scene.
For no reason. He's just riding his bike.
Yeah, just riding his bike. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the flip side of that, I like how the black community in this was not painted as victims.
Right.
Like they were just as sort of forceful in their response. Now, was either side healthy with the racism? No. But they weren't just victims. Like they pushed back. And the extreme version of that was, I mean, like the friends were like lit up on fire in a car. And the community surrounding it was like celebrating it.
Yeah.
And, criticizing and attacking.
They look better now or something. There was some comment made from the peanut gallery. Remember when they were, and it's like,
And they were like throwing things at C and like telling him to get out of here and say, get out of here, white boy. And like, I mean, that's like racism in its unhealthiest form. But like, it shows that there's like both sides of it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not bridging.
No, I know.
Connection.
And just like, wow, like that scene at the end when his friends were obviously in the body bags basically. And it's like,
no sensitivity to that.
No, and they're telling C to get out and stuff. I mean, like the level of hatred, is pure and like very uncomfortable. But I think it's a good part of the movie for people who now live in this environment where most times that's not the case. I know we still obviously have racism exists,
Sure.
But to know that like literally in New York City, in the Bronx, at one point in time, you had hatred at that level.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, New York, yeah.
That's wild.
Depending on where we are in the country, that kind of hatred still
exists.
in an overt way.
Yes.
In an explicit way like that. I think there's a lot of implicit racism that goes on, even
Totally.
in the Northeast. But explicitly, that was there to the point where there'd be violence. And it's also understandable.
Yep.
Like, the kid was riding his bike and he got knocked off his bike and got beat up. So you can see where, like, it creates space for hatred to breed.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
It's sad. It's awful. I mean, you know, but it's a part of the film. It's interesting that it was almost like shoehorned into the film, which up until that point was about like being a good person or being a gangster.
Right.
And then, oh yeah, let's toss in racism.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
But a good, like, so Lauren, you know, I was wanting her to watch the film with me, and then things went awry because she started watching, but the kids were still up. But it's not a movie where you can have children in the room. There's too much stuff
a lot of
going on.
F-bombs.
F-bombs, but also like violence.
Yeah.
So the kids go to sleep. Then one of the kids comes back down. She went up. Lauren fell asleep in Joy's bed. Like, you know, so I was like, all right.
Yeah.
But she asked me this morning. She's like, so, because she'd never seen the movie before. I was like, man, I was really wanting you to watch with me, but like she's asking, like, honestly, I hit upon those things. I was like, it's the movie essentially. It's between being a good person or a bad person, like that mobster component. Then you have the love story with C and Jane, which I love. Like, honestly, I still think that scene where he's walking her from the school back to her apartment, that like you said, the vulnerability and everything.
Shabab.
Loved that scene. And then, like, yeah, the racism component, it just like brings in. It's got a lot of different dynamics, which is very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about sort of the ending of the whole thing.
Yeah.
You have the tragedy of his friends dying, and then he goes back into the bar, and he sees that one face that's not smiling.
I know.
And he sees the death of his father figure, one of his father figures, in very slow motion. His father gets shot. Sonny gets shot. It's crushing for him. You go to the funeral, and then, actually, hold on. Let's rewind a little bit.
Yeah.
Because something very important happens with Sonny believing for a moment that C had betrayed him.
Oh, I know.
And he grabs him up against the side of the building.
Yep.
And he's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
And he's like, and C just starts crying. He's like, what are you talking about? You're a
you.
father
You're
figure
the
to me. I
father
love you. Why would I
figure.
ever do that to you? And I think it wakes Sonny up. So after that, he saves him from the car.
Yes.
But like, it just says something about his own defense mechanisms and of like how terrified he is of the world, how he can't
Terrified
trust
of the world.
Of
Can't trust anybody.
nobody.
But then C crying and looking at him, being like, "What are you talking about?
What are you
You're like a
talking
father
about?
to me.
Yeah.
What do you mean?"
Yeah, and then I think the moment of enlightenment for C when they're driving in the car afterwards, he's like, "Do you ever think about the fact that I could have been blown up and that the bomb was in there beforehand? You didn't even think about me? Why? Like, you can't trust you can't trust any. I can't trust anyone. Not for me. I can't trust anyone." He's like, "Not me." That was the turning point. I'm not going to live the way you live.
Yep.
I'm not going to be
I like
you.
that.
He went right back, like he became his father's son.
He became Lorenzo.
Yeah, he became his father's son in that moment.
Yep.
You know, but he still loved Sonny because Sonny did save his life.
Yes.
And then now we go right back to the bar scene.
I know.
He gets shot, awful, and then we go to the funeral. What was your perspective on the funeral scene?
You know, the funeral scene I thought was a great scene, but that bar, I like what they did in the film where they captured the shooter in slow motion. You know, everyone's in the bar hemming, hawing, laughing. Sonny's calling, "C, come on over here. Yeah, get my boy, come over." And everyone's having a great time, and C can see that someone's approaching Sonny and is stoic. And he could tell right off the gate that this person is out of place and like new, and he started yelling, "No." And so like that scene I thought was so moving and is like crazy. And then you flip right, you know, you're in the funeral home.
It's worth mentioning who that shooter was.
Yeah, he was the son
Of the person that Sonny shot all those
Sonny
years
shot
ago.
8 years prior or whatever it was. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, which I thought that was kind of amazing. I was like full circle. And that's when Carmine, Joe Pesci's character comes back to light. So I think two things on that I love. Number one, the scene in the funeral home. It was very clear to everyone, obviously, how close the dynamic between Sonny and C was, because C was like a VIP basically.
Yeah.
In the funeral home.
Yeah.
People knew this is like basically Sonny's son.
Yes.
So and I loved, we talked about it already, but I loved that Lorenzo came to the funeral home and paid his respects. I thought that was like a perfect bow on Lorenzo as like a family man with someone with values. Like he understands. Like that was a great moment. And then in at the end, the best part for me of that whole scene was when Carmine, Joe Pesci, is telling C that if he needs anything, he can come to the bar, come see me.
It's like
I'll be here now.
A temptation to go back to that life.
You know, I'm here now for some time. Like, you can come see me. I know Sonny's told me all about you. I know how close the two of you were. If you need anything, honestly anything, he's like, you come and see me. But then C quickly responds back saying like,
I'm gonna take a break from
I
the
take
bar.
a break from the bar. I
Yeah.
love that. And I
Yeah.
think that like was like it kind of tied it up in saying like he understand, like it ended in the death of Sonny, like he saw.
Yes.
Full cycle. Like, this is the life. This is basically what Sonny was telling me.
Yes.
And it came to fruition.
Yes.
And then he was saying at the end to Carmine.
There was such a beautiful moment too, because what something that Sonny said to C was, "Nobody cares. Nobody cares."
I
And then
know.
he's like, "You're wrong about this one, Sonny. I care."
Yeah.
Our relationship was real.
Yep.
This wasn't built on power dynamics and crime and money.
He said, "You're
and
wrong about
exchange.
this one."
You're wrong about this. I care. And I think Carmine cared.
And Carmine cared.
Carmine cared because he saved his life
Yeah.
years ago. But it was a real moment of love that their
Right.
relationship was actually authentic. Sonny was a father to him. Sonny saw him as a son.
Right.
And even the way he talked to him was like he was almost preparing him to be a mob boss.
Right. Right.
Not a henchman.
No.
He said, "What are you gonna punch this guy? You're gonna attack this guy that owes you $20? Don't listen to these I don't
Yep.
even know what he called him, but like
Yeah.
henchmen basically. Like there's a higher level here." Sonny was brilliant. He studied. When he went to jail, he read books.
That's
He
what
said,
he
"There's
said. He's like-
there's 3 things you can do in jail," and then he goes, "What did you do?" "None of them. I read." But Sonny, he was brilliant, and he took him in as a son, and there was a real moment of love, and like
Yeah.
there's like a salvation for Sonny in that dynamic.
Totally.
Last point of the whole film before he says, "This is just another Bronx tale," which is worth commenting on because he normalizes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it was a fantastic tale, but he was like, "This is just
another,
life here."
Another Bronx tale.
But right before that, he says, "I did finally understand," because over and over again, both of his father's figures said, "You'll understand when you get older." And the thing that he understood was 2 things. The first was, these men taught me how to give and receive unconditional love, which is the point of life.
Right. Right.
It is the meaning of life to
Right.
give and receive unconditional love, to open up ourselves and show who we are, and hope to God that someone says, "I love you anyway in all your mess and who you are."
Right.
So that was beautiful. And then the second one was the wasted talent comment.
I know.
And like Sonny was wasted talent. I think in a way, I wonder if Lorenzo believed himself to be wasted
I know.
talent.
Yeah. It's a
Wasted
good
talent.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's just a bus driver. But he was brilliant. He was kind of beyond his station, and he made the best of his station. Not that there's anything wrong with being a bus driver.
No.
But like he was like an elite bus driver.
Right, right.
Like I wonder if he thought that he should have been more than what he was.
Yep,
But was
yeah.
limited by his capacity. Just like he talked about his parents. Would you ever talk about your grandfather that way?
Yes.
He did the best that he could with what he had. And like the circumstances made it so he could only be a bus driver, but he had so much talent, so much gift at the level where he could compete with Sonny,
Right.
who was the mob boss. But both of them were basically saying to C, like, don't you be us.
Don't you be us. Right. Right.
Don't you be us.
Right.
You have talent. Don't waste a kid.
Don't waste it.
And that was the ultimate level that he needed, the ultimate level and the ultimate meaning and theme that he needed to learn as he's about to embark on adulthood.
Adulthood. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was such a nice cap to the movie. I think they killed it at the end there. That ending was like perfect.
So good.
He said he had enough with the bar for now, right? So he was like, I think I've had enough. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm taking a break from the bar.
Yeah. He's in love with Jane. He doesn't care what anyone thinks anymore.
He moves on. He learned. He said I understood now. Like now I finally know.
Yeah.
And but then at the end, like you said, they ended with it was just like another Bronx tale. It's kind of just like, all right, well, listen, life goes on, and this is just another story.
It just shows the importance of everyone's experience.
Everyone.
Like if you
Yeah.
enter into anyone's life, they have their own drama. They have their own kingdom with which they are kings,
Right.
Or queens.
Right.
And everyone's experience is so important to them.
Yep.
And to minimize other people's experience is a problem.
Right.
And to just honor like the uniqueness and drama and story and narrative of everyone's life, that's the way to approach life.
Right.
And
Right.
that's the big picture takeaway from this. This is what a story, but it's one of many.
Right.